This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I talk about the tragic loss of Dwayne Haskins Jr. We talk about the impact that he not only had on the Ohio State football program, but also in the communities of Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C. And then we talk about the Masters, and we discuss how none of us really watch the Masters that often. We barely even watch golf, but we try to discuss the best we can on how the Masters went this year. And then we finish up by talking about, well, the Battle of Ohio, the Cleveland Guardians versus the Cincinnati Reds. We discuss how both the seasons are going so far for both teams. And then we might put, let's just say, a little wager on the Battle of Ohio. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. We're back. Josh, Ben, we're here for another episode of the Baseline Podcast. And we've had a lot of things happen in sports, Josh, from the Masters to the MLB starting the start of the MLB season to moves in the NFL to the NBA playoffs happening here soon. A lot of things are happening. But before we get into all of that, we first want to just take a moment to talk about the tragic loss of Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, a former Ohio State Buckeye, Dwayne Haskins Jr. An amazing person. But before I get into my style, I'll let Josh. Josh, how did first off, what did you think and kind of some of the thoughts that went into this obviously tragic situation?
Yeah, I mean, that was honestly the first thing that I woke up to. I believe it was Saturday morning, just scrolling through my phone like I normally would. And that's like the first thing that I see. And it kind of takes you back a little bit because you're like, you don't expect I guess the big story in sports that day to be the death of a 24-year-old quarterback that's like just getting his NFL career started. That's kind of like the main takeaway that I have from the whole thing. If there's any lesson to be learned is like, I mean, that as far as we know, the accident wasn't Dwayne's fault. He was just, doing business as usual, practicing with some teammates in Florida, where it's a little bit warmer right now and the weather's nice. So they're getting some reps in, getting ready for the football season. And I'm sure that death was the last thing on his mind, as it is for most people in their 20s. So it just kind of goes to show you. And Kobe Bryant was like the really the first main celebrity death that did that for me but to really let you know, like, hey, you're not immortal. We are really here, like, but a vapor, like the Bible says. Like, we don't know when our time's going to be up. And for Dwayne, it was much sooner than I'm sure he anticipated, than what most people anticipated. And I know there's been like backlash over the way that people, I think like Gil Brandt is his name, and Adam Schefter kind of initially reported it. I don't really have a much problem with that. I don't try to dive into that too much, but I'll turn it over to you, Ben. Being a Buckeye fan, maybe it hits home a little bit more for the Ohio State fan base because Dwayne had like not only a ton of Ohio State records, but a lot of Big Ten records.
Yeah. I'll be honest, Josh, I was at a missions conference on Saturday, and my friend that is a very good friend of mine here in Hungary, he's American, but he's been living here for 10 years. He's a Steelers fan. So I get a text from him where I've just finished up lunch. I get a text from him and he's like, hey, come here for a second. And so I went up to his room and he's like, hey, Dwayne Haskins died. And I was like, what? Like, that kind of that shock that we all feel, right? When we see someone that passed away, right? But as a Buckeye fan, right? Like, let's take away his accomplishments in the NFL or lack thereof, or however, people are getting frustrated about how it was. Like, okay, they were just reporting facts more or less. That's why I'm not
That's
big
why
deal
I don't
for
have
me.
a problem with the way that Schefter, I guess, tweeted out, because that might be how most people know Dwayne. If you're not a football fan, you might be initially like, who's Dwayne Haskins? And then you get the brief description there and you're like, oh, that guy, shoot, man, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I think as a Ohio State fan, it hits a lot harder. Dwayne Haskins was that guy that famously beat out Joe Burrow. Like, I just want to put you in perspective, one, how talented this young man is. I think people don't understand that Dwayne Haskins obviously had at that time more talent than Joe Burrow, a guy who went on to win a national title and take the Bengals of all teams to the Super Bowl. That's how good this guy was in college. He not only broke, as you said, broke so many Ohio State records, like 28, I think, or something like that. He also broke many Big Ten records held by Drew Brees, held by some of the greats. Dwayne Haskins had probably the best year you'll ever see out of a quarterback, at least in my lifetime. I don't remember seeing a quarterback for 1 year Urban said, here's the ball, go take it. And Dwayne Haskins proved that he was an amazing quarterback, but more or less he was also an amazing person. As far as I know, he was a really down-to-earth guy. He was a lovable guy. If you ever see the infamous video of him with Jim Tressel, or like when he was visiting campus when he was a kid, he said, I want to be a high state quarterback. And then for this guy to be a high state quarterback, and you hear the thoughts from Urban, Ryan Day put a tweet out, as well as a lot of his former teammates. And, CJ Stroud wears number 7. And I think he's going to be playing with a heavy heart this year, and with a, maybe with a little bit of chip on his shoulder to not only prove himself as a quarterback, but maybe do this for Dwayne as well. There's been calls for him to get his number retired. I always am hesitant on that because, there's so many famous people that have passed away that are amazing athletes. It's like at some point, that's okay. That's more to the emotions of Ohio State fans more than the reality. But yeah, man, it's still lost for words. I know I talked to my dad about it, and of course my dad being a huge Ohio State fan, and it does hurt, it stings, but I think we're reminded, like you said, Josh, that this world we're just here, we're visiting. And this is, we don't know when God's going to say it's time to go. And I think that is the reality that hit me. I mean, same with you. I think Kobe Bryant for me was like, whoa, my childhood, like a guy watching my childhood, and it's gone like that. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much you're given in this world. It can be taken away like that. And again, I think Dwayne Haskins, I know both of us put our prayers out for him and his family, that, that I know you can't, it's hard to say like, hey, get comfort out of this, because it's really hard. It's a tough time, but we pray that his name, what he's done in the community of Pittsburgh, community in Columbus, can be really felt through the next generations. So yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough pill to swallow. But I think we're going to do our best to uplift the rest of this time and kind of talk in a positive manner. Now, Josh, I know, first off, before we get into the rest of the show, I noticed you put out a couple of videos now of you getting ready for the old big old competition you got going on this summer. So my question is, how's it going? I know this wasn't in our show notes, but I wanted to ask an update. We need an update. The place needs an update.
No problem. So Saturday, so 2 days ago, marked officially 8 weeks out from show day. So I'm halfway through the prep as a whole. I've been feeling really good in training up until, I guess, this week is when I really started to feel, I guess, that drop in strength that you just inevitably are going to feel from not eating as much food as you normally would, since we're trying to cut down and lose weight. So that started to hit me a little bit this week. So I know it's only going to get worse from here. So at this point, it's going to be more like mentally challenging than like a physical challenge, if that makes sense. Even though like we're going to be physically challenged as well. Like it's just a matter of continuing to go in and work just as hard in the gym as you always do. Stay on your diet plan. Don't get tempted to go off or binge on anything. Like from here, it's just like all mental stuff from here.
I feel like there's gonna be a episode of this podcast where you're about to pass out because you just haven't ate enough, and you're sitting there like, yep, sounds good, Ben. We're just gonna hang in there.
I mean, some people kind of look a little bit like a zombie. I've followed a couple different guys on YouTube that have gone through like a bodybuilding prep as well, and some of them it hit them a little bit earlier, but also other people are maybe cutting a little bit faster. Maybe they started off a little heavier and need to drop a little bit more weight. So they need to cut calories out significantly faster and sooner. And so that kind of stuff can all impact, I guess, your energy levels too. But since I've taken more of the slow and steady approach, I think that's going to help me more in the long run, and why maybe I don't feel as bad at this point as some other people usually do.
What would you say if someone wants to get into this, or what are some of the struggles you've had? What are some of the things that have been helpful? Do you feel overall like more healthy at times, or is it kind of one of those, like, it's still the feeling out process to see how you truly feel?
Yeah, since you brought up health, I'll touch on that first because a lot of times when people think unhealthy, they think of in the extreme of being overly fat. But if people did bodybuilding like show prep long term, it's actually unhealthy in the opposite way because of how
Mm,
much you're depriving yourself of like just calories and nutrients and holding yourself to that low of a body fat percentage. I mean, if it's low enough, like then you and long enough of a time that you can start playing around with maybe a little bit of issues with your heart and stuff. Like there's a lot of
wow.
bodybuilders that end up dying relatively young, I guess, like in their 40s and 50s, and that's to be determined, I guess, whether it was abusing drugs or if it was just because of having to carry around, like, I mean, they're still about 300 pounds,
Yeah.
whether they're fat or whether because it's muscle, like having to carry around that kind of mass all the time. Like, so it's kind of unhealthy, I guess, in the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But in terms of like people that want to get into it, I mean, the most advice that I've gotten from people that have done shows before is just like enjoy the first one. Don't, I guess, think too much or get too nervous.
Yeah.
Like enjoy the experience and see how it goes. But even getting to a point where you feel like, I don't know, you're confident enough and have a good enough physique that is stage worthy. It's just like consistent years of training. I've been training since college, so it's been about 8 years at this point now, but only about 4 of that has been like intentional training where I really felt like I knew what I'm doing and had a purpose and a goal. So those are my things, is like make sure that you're mentally strong enough, make sure that confidence is up there, and stay consistent.
Yeah, I really hope that one day that I can participate in a dad bod or like a skinny championship. I don't know which one. Maybe a combination of the two. I just know that personally I don't have the patience for it. Like I just don't. Like if I see a good burger sitting in front of me or a steak, yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean, that's the issue with most people too, is how many people can
Like
stay on a strict diet for 16
oh,
weeks
dude, I
and
can't.
get ready for a show
I
day.
can barely stay on a strict diet for a month. Like my wife is like, we need to eat healthier, and I'm like, look, I love you, but like it's hard. Like for me, because I always have such a great metabolism that like I can just eat, and it doesn't really bother me,
And that's
right?
how I was as a kid growing up.
Yeah. And so now I've slowly started to see it slow down. So like now I'm just like, okay, maybe I can do a diet here and there, but it's just like I usually get like 2 weeks in and then I'm like, man, I hate eating all this green. Like I want some fatty fried food, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, it's awesome to hear. So if you guys go check out Josh's YouTube channel, it's really cool to see his journey. It'd be cool for you guys to check it out as he's going through this process. But Josh, speaking of your own personal, you root for a lot of different teams. You have the Guardians, you have the Browns, you have the North Carolina Tar Heels, and as we go into this NCAA championship review, I know it's happened already, but we want to take some time to review. Josh went away from from what he'd been doing the whole tournament, which was picking against North Carolina. And he listened to Ben's great advice, which turned out to be terrible advice, and he chose North Carolina. So, Josh, as a Tar Heel fan, first off, I think you've probably got to be really proud of this team and of Coach Davis. So, yeah, let's just dive into your thoughts on this great championship game.
Yeah, I mean, at halftime, it was looking like you and I were geniuses going with North Carolina. I can't remember if it was a 15 or 16-point lead at halftime, but we couldn't miss a shot. Where our defense was incredible on Kansas, and we were feeling really good over in Tar Heel country. And at halftime, they even mentioned like the largest comeback in tournament history, and it was like if Kansas is going to come back and win this game, they're going to have to set a record. And I mean, there's
It's like
a
the
little
Baylor
tiny
game all
part
over
of you
again.
in there that's like, man, wouldn't that be terrible if that happened? But then there's like an overwhelming majority of you that's like, we got this in the bag.
Yeah.
Especially with the way they played in the first half, it's like we couldn't miss. And then it became very evident in the second half. I don't know if it was like a 30 to 10 run that Kansas started off with.
Ridiculous.
And it's like, you can't, under any circumstances, have a swing like that. Like, how many times have we seen like how important the first 10 minutes of that second half are? Like, it was instrumental in the North Carolina Duke game, like Carolina coming back to beat Duke. That first 10 minutes was important. We've seen that in other games as well. That
Baylor game
in the second half. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what allowed Baylor to come back and even make it overtime to begin with. So I just want to be clear. This was a choke job by the Tar Heels. Like, there's no other way around it. I
Yeah.
know there's been some people making excuses about maybe some no calls that happened, and then there was this other video going around of Baycott in that last minute when he went down with an injury that the floor like moved. I watched the clip like a dozen times and I couldn't see anything there.
But I want to pause you there though. Basketball courts, if you played basketball, you know that there is some give to basketball courts. There's a little bounce. If you go to the Cedarville's gym and you jump on it, there's like, you feel a little bit of movement. That's like a
every
normal
now and then
thing.
you can be walking and you can kind of feel like, okay, this board maybe sinks a little bit more or whatever. So yeah, I'm not one to make excuses like that necessarily. Like, I rarely will. Especially with it's my teams, I feel like I'm harder on my teams than most people. Like, Carolina choked that game away. There's no way around it. They should have even been in that position to begin with. But since I don't want to crap on Baycott for that, because the dude gave it his all for 2 games when he wasn't 100%. One of the greatest Tar Heels of all time. I think he was the first player in NCAA history to have 6 games, all double-doubles.
That's crazy.
So, that's an accomplishment in itself. The starting lineup, all tournament gave it their all with our rotations only 7 men deep, and dealing with like Baycott being out and Manick had to leave for a little bit. Puff Johnson stepped up and played like the game of his life up to this point. So hopefully that means that next season when he's a junior, it's going to be even more incredible. And Hubert Davis, first season, like taking an 8 seed all the way to the national championship. I got to feel good about what's coming in the future. So, heck of a season for the Tar Heels overall in hindsight. Happy about what Hubert Davis was able to do, but this game specifically, there's no way around it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They choked that away.
Yeah, and I look at Kansas. You got to give credit to Bill Self. I thought it was really interesting. The 2 years ago or whatever, they were going to be the number 1 overall seed or whatever it was, and they didn't get a chance to play the tournament because they got canceled. And then for them to do that, so you got to give credit to Bill Self and that Kansas team. I didn't realize they hadn't won it since 2008, which I think is just crazy.
That's what I thought. Like, when Mario Chalmers made that 3 to send it to overtime against Memphis, I thought that was the last time they won.
They've had, if you think about it, they've had so many good teams in the last 13 years, 14 years. Mm-hmm. It's crazy to think that they've never won one in that time span, but it's remarkable to me. What would you say as a Tar Heel fan, right? You see how UNC kind of an up and down year, they get to the tournament, they play really well. What is the one thing you're looking forward to going to the off season as a North Carolina fan that you hopefully that they can either improve on, or that you think they could to maybe even not do in the future? And I think I know what you're going to say, not do, but go ahead.
Well, first off, I'm interested to see how many of these guys are actually going to be back next year, because it's very possible that the entire starting 5 could take off for the draft, because Leaky Black is a senior, but COVID gave him an extra year of eligibility. So will he come back? Time will tell. I would imagine Baycott is being a bona fide first round pick, maybe even a top 10 pick. I haven't looked at any draft boards yet, but I imagine he's definitely gone. Caleb Love playing out of his mind this term, and I would imagine he's gone as a sophomore. RJ Davis, I believe a sophomore as well, will probably take off. And Manick was a grad transfer, so he's definitely gone too. So, that's going to leave the door open for guys like Styles and Puff Johnson. Now it's going to be their team most likely. And I guess we're going to see what kind of a recruiting class that Coach Davis was able to put together this coming season. All those freshmen are coming in. So hopefully depth is more of a strength next year, and we don't have to rely on 5 guys super hard, like a starting lineup playing 40 minutes a game. You really don't want to do that. So that's one thing I would hope to see improve down the road is a deeper rotation, and then I guess just more consistency. But that can depend on the makeup of your team too, like how tight they are and how the chemistry is, which I feel like that got better for Carolina, especially once the tournament started. Like that was the best I'd ever seen them play all year.
Yeah, and I would agree with you when you say that, because I think it was just really cool to see, an 8 seed, do what they did in that run. I think it's always fun. March Madness is what makes March Madness fun, right? Even though both of our brackets were just atrocious, and we just won't speak of them again until next year when they're also bad, because we overthink it and we think that our things are amazing or whatever. But no, I think in general, I really do. I think that it's same with Ohio State. I honestly feel the same thing because I don't know if you saw Ohio State's losing their top 2 players. Branham declared, and of course you're losing Liddell. So I don't know what's going to happen with Ohio State either. Ohio State could end up being like a really good team, or they could be a team that goes 19-14. But, unlike Michigan, Ohio State wouldn't get the, the nice benefit of the doubt that they're, a Big Ten team and get thrown in there. But that's just my throw shade at that. But I thought one fascinating thing, and I don't know if you saw this, Josh, you probably did because you're a stat guy. In the NCAA men's championship and women's championship, South Carolina and Kansas played like similar teams or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but they played Creighton. They both played Creighton. They both played what else? They like played an ACC team, a Big East team, or something like that. It was like the same type of route, which is just kind of weird to me, and kind of gave me weird jitters about all that. But so yeah, South Carolina won the women's. I wish we had time to talk about that, but we just don't. So Josh, would you rate this March Madness as a great one, or as like, okay, it was good, but not great, or like, yeah, it wasn't that great? What would you rate this March Madness?
Well, I'll try to judge it as a non-Tar Heel fan.
Yeah, as a non-Tar Heel fan.
I mean, this was an 8 seed making it all the way to the national championship. We saw a 15 seed for the first time make the Elite 8. There were a lot of, I guess, things like that maybe add up to, a heck of a tournament. Michigan, we shouldn't have even been there, even won 2 games as well. So, I mean, this was, in terms of bracket busting, it was a heck of a tournament to watch. And I suppose to an extent, as a North Carolina fan, it was a blast to watch too, because I didn't have expectations past the round of 32. So,
yeah, I would say I loved St. Peter's. Obviously, I don't know. Did you hear that St. Peter's not only lost their coach, but like the 3 dudes from the NCAA
tournament? They did, and team? I think that is going to be how the transfer portal affects college basketball the most now, actually, because really? I didn't think that it would be like in college football where guys are looking to play, because most of these young guys are going to go to the draft like in 1 or 2 years anyways to go get that NBA money. So there's always going to be like availability for guys to be able to play basketball. But I think that opened the door for all these kids on these small schools. They're going to get a chance to go and play for these teams that they just knocked out of the tournament now. Yeah. Like these teams, like, I don't know, maybe Kentucky's going to go and get Doug Edert now. Who knows? But I think
supposedly he's going to Bryan. Supposedly he's going to Bryan or something like that. Supposedly that's where he's going.
Big. Well, that's kind of like how I see the transfer portal being utilized in college basketball, is like these small schools that are knocking off the big teams are going to start the big teams that are getting beat by them are going to start poaching these guys away. But if he's going to like Bryan, that's kind of weird. I didn't see that coming.
Well, hopefully, Josh, that they can have like a normal, they can fix the transfer portal in both sports so that it's not like overused. Because that's the thing that bothers me the most, is just how much it's used. Like, I'm just old school, I think, but that's besides the point. So yeah, it's great. It was a great basketball season. We've seen a lot of names. I even think about Wright State women's basketball that has the former Cedarville coach, Kerry Hoffman, just got 2 Cedarville transfers, which I thought was kind of cool. So Emily Chapman and Bolander are both moving from Cedarville to Wright State. So I thought that was kind of cool. A little tidbit of news there. But we're going to go from the basketball court, sort of. We're going to touch on the NBA later, but from the basketball court to the greens of Augusta. And we're going to talk about the Masters, which, to be honest, I watched like the last round. I like paid attention to Tiger, and then he just started being like playing terrible. So I just kind of like went with the flow there. But Josh, give me your thoughts on the Masters, if you have any. I honestly, I've watched enough at the beginning and the end to kind of get the summary of all of it.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, Ben. I'm not a golf fan. I've never watched a single round of the Masters ever in my life in any given year. This year, maybe more so than past years, I followed more from a distance just because I was curious if Tiger Woods was going to be able to even play in this tournament to begin with. Because, I mean, the storyline all week was, last year Tiger, is talking about having his legs potentially amputated from that car wreck he got in. And now he might be able to not only walk 18 holes, but compete in the biggest golf tournament in the world. So I was kind of curious if he was going to be able to do that. And then initially, I want to say like day 1, he was still like on par. Like he wasn't winning, but he wasn't like so far behind that he couldn't come back. And then Saturday, he just like,
it was awful.
Way off. And it was so like, okay, bad. Well, It's amazing that he even got to play. I wasn't anticipating he would win. I think what was it, like 2021 or 2020 when he had won it?
It was I think it was before COVID. I think
maybe 2019. I don't remember exactly, but I don't know if you know the guys at the Infield Singles podcast.
I do, yes.
Yes, I hopped on there one time during that stretch, and we were talking briefly about the Masters because it was coming up, and they wanted to know how much I followed golf and who I was picking to win. And I was like, guys, I literally can only name you like 2 golfers. They're Tiger Woods and then whoever the Ricky guy is.
Oh, Ricky Fowler.
Ricky Fowler, yeah. So I was like, you know what? Why not Tiger? Why can't Tiger win the Masters? And it was just kind of like joking around because at this time it was like Tiger was in that phase where he was like just trying to get back to like his past self still. And then he won the whole thing. And I was like, I guess I'm a golf expert now. Like, is that what this means? But that was, so that was a fun prediction there. But that's about how much I followed the Masters. And I do know that Scheffler ended up winning it this year. Sounds like you watched a little bit more than me, though. Was there any kind of like tight competition in that first round, or was it pretty much set?
I mean, it was kind of set, but I would also say this, though. McIlroy gave Scheffler a run for his money at the end. McIlroy was at even. So he was at even. Like, wasn't at the beginning of the final round. He was like, and Scheffler had like a 9-stroke lead.
Did he shoot 64? Is that right?
Something like that. I'm looking at the finishing round, but McIlroy basically just climbed his way back to where he was -7 or 7 under, I guess that would be how you say it, right? And Scheffler was 10. So like there was never a chance, I think, for McIlroy to catch. But the fact that McIlroy came from like all these other dudes that were ahead of him, like Smith was like he was like 7 under. So he was right there with Scheffler, and then he kind of fell off. But then you look at Tiger, right? Like this is just how bad Tiger played. I'm 100% honest with you. He finished at the people that didn't get cut. So people that missed the cut obviously don't count in this. Woods finished 6 from last. So he had +13. Like it was, he played so bad. Like, and obviously some of the big names like didn't play well. There was a Korean that had a chance to actually, I think he was leading at one point. He ended up finishing like, I think 9th or something like that, 9th, 10th. But I mean, honestly, it was a really good, I mean, I don't watch a ton of golf, but I think because of my dad watched a little bit, but my grandfather always watched golf. So I kind of grew up kind of watching it. I couldn't play it. Like, I think if Josh and I went out on the green, to do a nine holes, we both hit like +47.
I'll tell you, my best day golfing. I golfed a lot during 2020 when there wasn't any other activity that you were even allowed to do at the time. Me and a couple buddies would go, and none of us were really good, so it was just kind of more like a fun time. The best I ever did was 75 over 9 holes, which
that's not bad.
That's terrible, guys. There's guys that are shooting 18 that are getting 75s.
Well, so. you know, that's just the way it is. But yeah, so it was a good, I think, tournament. I mean, I don't know. It was weird for me, I guess. Like I was hoping Tiger would do well. Like after that first round, I think he shot a 72, 71 or something like that. I'm like, oh, Tiger's going to be in this. Like there's a chance for him to do well.
In the mix, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like, obviously Phil Mickelson wasn't in it this year because of some of the comments he's made, which I won't get into that. I'm going to leave politics out of this. I'm not going to talk about it, but there's a lot of things like obviously there's some of the good golfers like Spieth missed the cut. There's a bunch of people that missed the cut that was shocker. So yeah, overall, I think it was a good Masters. The right guy. I think it's cool to see a guy like Scheffler kind of I never heard of him win it. I think that's always fun for me to see like a no-name kind of come out and win it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was the Masters and it was fun.
Do you have any idea why Tiger draws such, I guess, an interest in the sport, even not being one of, I guess, the better competitors? Is it like a similar thing with how people are always interested, whether you love or hate LeBron, what he's doing?
I think it's so. I think he set a standard. He set a standard. I mean, he came in and first off, he's African-American. When was the last time you saw an African-American golfer do what he did? Right. And he, he's a black golfer that did amazing. He set, obviously set the storm on, Jack Nicklaus came out and said he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest golfer of all time. Like all these different things, former golfers saying left and right. But I think it was also this kind of not scandals. I would hate to say scandal, but like some of the mistakes he made with his like ex-wife and things like that, like that created the buzz and the Tiger Woods video games, like all these different things that just kind of all came together and creates this aurora around Tiger Woods. Like
Yeah.
you couldn't see, I don't think you could watch the Masters or any golf. Like when he was out, when he's injured, I think their viewership has to go down. Like who else? McIlroy? Like, okay. Like, you know, but he doesn't bring that
It's
like
kind of
Tiger
interesting
Woods.
because, I mean, there's a lot of other good golfers that I would think are, well, I'm not even going to say think, that I know are better than Tiger right now at this moment. And they don't even draw like the same kind of interest or viewership. And yeah, I've always wondered if that's just because like Tiger, because of like you mentioned some of the stuff he's had happen off the course, does he just have like a hater base now that tunes into him? And
I think I don't think it's a hater base. I think it's a lot like Jack Nicklaus. Like Jack Nicklaus, you could ask my grandfather, my dad, like everyone loves Jack Nicklaus. When Jack Nicklaus, he didn't do the par 3 course this year. It was the first time ever. But when he would go out there, he would have tons of people watch him. It's the same thing. Like this guy set so many records. He was an amazing golfer, amazing person. And I think, and I'm not here to judge character by any means. I mean, Tiger's a little different than Jack Nicklaus, but it's the same idea. Like the dude was an amazing golfer. And I still think Tiger Woods is better than Josh, myself, and my dad and my brother put together. But at the same time, like he's just an amazing golfer. Like if we're doing putt-putt, I could whoop y'all because I'm great at putt-putt. That's one thing I can do for certain is putt-putt. I can tell you that much. But yeah, so it was a great Masters, an amazing time. But we're going to go from the Masters because obviously Josh and I are more into the baseball side of things right now. And we're going to talk about not only just, yes, I know it's, don't get me started.
We got Jose extended.
You did. But not only are we going to talk about the Reds and Guardians, we're also going to talk about also the start of the baseball season. But I will say the Guardians and the Reds have come out of nowhere to start this year and are actually playing pretty decent. Well, maybe, I mean, Josh,
I'll push back a little bit on Cleveland because they started off, they scored 1 run in their first 2 games and then just randomly exploded for 17 in their 3rd game.
Okay,
so
that's
I mean,
true.
It averages out to like, what is that, 6 runs a game? But don't get it twisted. We played terribly those first 2 games.
But I will say that at least they both have wins on the board. I mean, the Reds split a series with the Braves, which at Atlanta, we all know how hard it is to play at Atlanta.
Yeah, that's about as hopeful as you can be as a Reds fan.
We'll start with you with the Guardians. Give me your thoughts on them, kind of the things that are going on, and then you can pitch me questions about the Reds because we both have different opinions, but it still works the same way. So Guardians, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean the Indians pitching. Should I say Indians? I'm going to keep saying Indians because
it's okay.
That's what I keep calling them. Yeah, Cleveland, whatever. The pitching staff was not going to be an issue, right? And that has been strong all 3 of these games. I think they have allowed 3 runs in the first game, 1 in the second, and then 3 in that 3rd game. So, I mean, that's looking strong. Beebs looked good. The bullpens looked good. And Plezak looked solid too in his start. So, I mean, there's literally no complaints about the pitching staff on my end. It's always been about the bats. That's always been Cleveland's issue. And that was the issue in those first 2 games. And then randomly, all of a sudden, they just go off for 17. I think they scored 10 in the first 2 innings of that 3rd game in Kansas City. And Ben, we talked about potential rookies of the year. We gave all of our award predictions. And one man that I did not see coming that I was reprimanded about for being a Cleveland fan and not mentioning, my buddy Gabe, if you're watching this, shout out to you. But I got to give a shout out to Stephen Kwan, Ben. Let me tell you about this rookie's start to the season. So Stephen Kwan became the 6th player since 1901 to record a 5-hit game within the first 3 games of his career. He's currently batting .800, 8 for 10, and he has 0 swings and misses, seen 58 pitches total in these 3 games. Like, this guy looks like a solid prospect for us in the outfield. I'm excited to see his career continue to go. And then kind of touching on that outfield too, we extended Miles Straw after the first game where he got, I think, 2 or 3 hits, or maybe he got on base 2 or 3 times. And I was like, man, who's this Miles Straw guy? Because he actually did play, I think, a little bit in Cleveland this year, but I couldn't remember him for some reason. I'm looking through and it looks like he had a solid career in Houston. We made a trade last year to get him, and he's our leadoff guy, our center fielder, and he just looked like a dog. He got, I think, a stolen base as well. And right after that first game, Cleveland saw enough and extended extended him 5 years, 25 million, and traded away Bradley Zimmer, who was looking to be like in contention for that center field spot too. So they kind of were like, well, we got our center fielder, and now it looks like we have a right fielder with Stephen Kwan. Like this is, or maybe Stephen Kwan's left field. I can't remember. Outfield, I'm pretty sure though. So, I mean, the outfield in Cleveland, maybe this is going to lead to some more bats, more runs down the road, hopefully, because I mean, these guys aren't going to be any kind of guys that are hitting bombs. They're contact hitters. That's what Kwan's hits were. That's what Straw's hits were, which I mean, I'm cool small ball. Like if you want to commit to that and score, that's cool. That's what, I mean, traditionally baseball has always been about. That's how runs have gotten brought across. I mean, maybe some of these guys like Jose, who we also were able to extend 5 years, 124 million, I believe. Maybe guys like Jose, Franmil Reyes can, in that middle of the order, bring him home. But not really too many complaints other than let's see some more consistent scoring from Cleveland. But it is opening weekend, 162 game season, Ben. A lot to be determined still. I don't think we're going to have to trade a lot of guys in Cleveland, considering now that most of the team is under contract for at least 3 years now. I don't know much about how Cincinnati's going. I didn't know that they split with Atlanta. That's pretty exciting. Hunter Green made his MLB debut, so I'm sure that's something to be excited about in Cincy. How are the Reds fans feeling right now?
It's a weird one. After the first game, I was in shock, right? I woke up, right? Because the game happened like at 8 o'clock your time. So I woke up and I was like, wait, what? The Reds won? I mean, no one thought that. I mean, like I was looking like Tyler Mahle, he's like our ace because Castillo, I can't trust him to stay healthy and to Castillo's one of those guys, right? He's a guy that throws a great changeup. That's about it. Like he's really good at certain areas. But yeah, the Reds played well. They kind of got beat up. They didn't get really beat up. Like I really feel like they didn't get beat up in any of the games they lost. They gave up some runs. The bullpen honestly played pretty well all the way through, which is the worry for the Reds. If you look at the Reds bullpen, I don't think you can name. You might be able to name one guy on the Reds bullpen. Like I had to look up guys. I'm like, who is this dude? I don't know who you are. And obviously we have a lot of guys injured. So like we have, I believe, obviously Castillo's injured. We have Mike Minor, a guy we required this offseason. He's been injured. There's a couple bullpen guys injured. So the Reds aren't healthy in the pitching staff, but the bats, it's shocking because we brought in Pham. I don't know if you remember him, played for the Cardinals.
Pham, yep.
Yeah, had an amazing career with the Cardinals, then kind of fell off. He's been weird because he hasn't got a hit yet, but his on-base percentage is like 300. So the guy's going to get on base. He steals bases. But right now, it's a Tyler Stevenson show. Our catcher, he's a young dude. We traded away Barnhart, and we said, here's the keys. Take it. And the guy's already hitting like 380. He's got a home run already. He got 4 RBIs, 5 RBIs. Brandon Drury, a guy I didn't even realize still played in the MLB, had a 3-run homer. Like the Reds are basically, this is how I say the Reds are, right? They're like the quilt your grandmother made, and she got patches from every other old shirt that you had, and they put them together, and it somewhat makes a team that is competitive, but yet at the same time, it won't always keep you warm, if that makes sense. If that's a good analogy, that's pretty much how the Reds are looking right now. Because like Joey Votto is going to be the guy, right? We're paying him $25 million. Don't get me started on that contract. I'm still upset that we signed him. I mean, I love Joey Votto, but the fact that we're still paying him at age 37, $25 million is besides the point. But Joey Votto's been great leader. He's done a great job. They mic'd him up the first game. Check it out, by the way. If you are watching this or listening, I encourage Josh as well. Go listen to him mic'd up. This is the reason why we have Joey Votto. He is a Comedy Central actor on the field at all times. It's great. It's awesome. But then you said Hunter Green, and Hunter Green was at one point thought to be like a Ohtani, a two-way player, a guy that will play shortstop or play first base and hit the ball. But now he's just focused on pitching. I mean, he clocked 100 miles an hour like 20 times, which is just awesome to see, right? And we have Lodolo, who will be making a start here this next week. Yeah, it is a crazy reason because you remember last week, Josh, I was like, yeah, the Reds might finish like right above the Pirates. Now I'm looking at the team going, we could squeak by at 500, maybe. The only thing I'm worried about, and I said this to you, Josh, and you said this before we came on air, you said how the Reds just trade away guys even with the years left on their contract. And that's what I'm nervous about, that they'll keep Votto, but they'll trade away, some of these other young guys that, I just don't want them to trade away the guys that can build around and we can build on. They still need to figure out shortstop. Like Kyle Farmer, he's a former catcher that plays shortstop. They need to figure out third base. They have Jonathan India. So they have Jonathan India, Tyler Stevenson, Joey Votto. They have those three. They need to find the rest, because Shogo Akami, who released before we even started the year, and it's just, there's not really much else. Senzel's kind of been injured. It feels like the Reds are in this phase of like, they're there, but they don't want to commit to going out and getting guys. And I think they have the farm system to go out and get a few big dudes. But like Mike Moustakas is great, but he hits 200 and then maybe hits 20 home runs. It's that kind of thing. If that all makes sense and how the season's going.
How much pushback do you think is going to be in Cincinnati if this team, after swapping all those guys out, finishes 500 or even is like 500 around the summer? You think there's going to be pushback and like even more anger among the fan base? Like, imagine if we still had, X, Y, Z, all these guys that we trade away, what this team could have done. What were we thinking?
I know. I believe that 100%. I think if you don't trade away Wade Miley to the Cubs, you don't trade away Winker and Suarez, you keep these dudes in your team. This team right now is a team that can go compete. As I said, I've said this 1,000 times.
They trade away Sonny Gray. I think they traded away Garrett. And I mean, the list goes on.
You have these guys that could make your team that much better, and you trade away because you want to save money. Well, you're the ones that signed Joey Votto a 10-year, $255 million deal back in 2011 after he got an MVP. Not saying he didn't deserve it. I think Joey Votto at the time deserved it.
At 2011, yeah.
But Joey Votto now is 37 years old. He might hit 20 home runs. He might drive in 80 RBIs, but that's it. He's not a guy that's going to go out and do the 30 and 100 again and have an on-base percentage of 440. Like, he's not going to do that again because he's at his point in his career where, he wants to be a Red the rest of his life. And I want Joey Votto to be a Red the rest of his life. But please, can we ask him to bring his price down to like $5 million just to have some cap space? So I think the Reds will be fine. We'll see what happens. But more importantly, Josh, there is a big series that is starting. The Battle of Ohio is starting earlier than I ever remember it starting. And it's starting this week. It's the Reds versus Guardians. And honestly, the Guardians could win all three games or the Reds could win all three games. That's how I could see this going. It could literally go that way to where one team loses all three games, the other team wins all three games. Josh, I want to get your thoughts first. What is your thoughts going into this series here?
Yeah, so also 2-game series.
Yes, that's right. Not three. Not three. It's 2 games. I forgot.
Yeah, 2 games is kind of weird, but so that kind of means that there's a chance that we split this.
There is.
Do we want to make a bet on the podcast?
I'm scared. What is this bet going to involve? I need to know bet first.
I don't know. Just like whoever wins the series, $20.
Ooh, I like that.
Or whatever they spend in Hungary.
Yeah.
Not
Hungary. What are you like?
I don't know. I was going with Hungarian, and I was like, no. They are Hungarian. They live in Hungary. Yeah.
Yeah. It's complicated. Yeah.
And then if they tie, like nobody wins anything.
Let's do this, because how many series are there? Can you look and see how many series there are for this? I think there's gonna be 3 series if I'm adding up games correctly, maybe 4.
Let's see if I can find that.
I would think it's 4 series, because if they're doing a 2-game, they'll do another 2. Usually it's 8 times. I thought. No, not 8 times. I thought it was 2 series usually, like 1 and then. So I don't know how they're going to do it this year.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Okay, so we got. Looks like they play again later in May.
Is it a 2-game series?
2-game series in May, yeah.
So then I bet they do one more series then later in the year. So it might be 3 series, but like 2 total time. I guess I don't know how you put that.
Yeah.
But this is my thought. Because since there's multiple times we play, and since there's multiple things.
Do we want to make it a season collective?
I think it's a season collective. The whoever wins the Ohio, if people don't know, there's a Battle of Ohio. The team kind of claims the the rivalry for the year, I guess.
It's like who sucks the least.
Yes, who sucks the least, basically. I say $25. Whoever comes
25 for the collective. Let's do it.
Let's do it. It's on video. We all see it. So
right, I'm going to shake your hand here. I think you're on this side of the screen, or are you on this side of the screen for you?
We'll just do both hands.
Okay.
And we'll just awkwardly shake. I look like I'm hugging.
If you guys are listening to the audio, we just did like a weird handshake where we reached through the side of the screen and shook hands, even though we're a million miles away from each other.
That is true. That is true. So that's happening. But what are your thoughts on this short series? Because I will say this, Josh. I think 2-game series are really stupid. I have said this for many years. I think it's so dumb. It's no point to it.
It's like they just kind of jammed it in here, like trying to make it work somehow. Like, why couldn't you just make it 3 games, or like maybe, I guess, cut out one rest day here and move it another? I don't know. There's a lot of games that you guys schedule, but 2-game series is kind of weird.
So what are your thoughts?
Maybe they thought it was okay to do a 2-game here because neither team has to make that far of a road trip. It's not like you're coming from like, the other side of the United States to the other side for 2 games.
True.
It's like you're making I don't even know if they would bus that or if they would fly that.
They normally bus it. I'm pretty sure they normally bus it. That's normally how they do it. I thought, at least in the past, that's when I remember they used to do it. But What are your thoughts into this series? What do you think the Guardians need to do? And then I'll kind of go into what I think the Reds need to do in order to get at least a game out of this series and hopefully win the series.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% confident in our pitching right now. It's going to be, I guess, some of the guys from the bottom of our pitching staff at least to start, and then I think Bieber's going to get, if I remember right, that last game against you guys. If the pitching rotation is correct, that game 2 will be Bieber, because KC is a 4-game series, I want to say. So I have no doubt that our pitching is going to get the job done. I just wonder how our bats are going to do, because
it is at Great American Ballpark, which might help you guys.
Maybe. I also don't know really much about who we're going to be facing over in Cincinnati, like the pitching. So That's another thing is like, I already know our bats at least haven't awakened yet or aren't the greatest or consistent yet. So that's what it's going to come down to for me. I think our pitching is going to get the job done. I don't know how you feel about your batting against our pitching, but that's where I'm more confident. I'm just more worried about how are our guys going to be hitting the ball. And I think that'll be the main difference maker.
Well, first off,
guys that can hit, we just got to put it all together.
Yes. Well, first off, I want to correct you. You had a 3-game series, but the crazy thing is they're saying the probable pitchers for Tuesday's game is, so you might be listening to this as the game's going on, is Bieber versus Mahle.
Really?
So it's our top guy versus your top guy. So I think what the Reds did, because it's a 4-game series, they kept only a 4-man rotation for the first weekend, and they're going to go to a 5-man rotation for this next set.
That's usually how most teams would do it.
Yeah. So it looks like this. Yeah, Bieber versus Mahle. I think it's going to be a great matchup. I agree with you. I am very worried about the Guardians pitching, because the Reds have shown they hit well against good pitchers sometimes, but unless the top of the order of the Reds does well, there's usually not consistency throughout the order. This is the issue. The Reds don't have an everyday third baseman. They don't have an everyday left or right fielder. They don't have an everyday DH. They don't have like those kind of guys that are every day. You guys have a lot of these positions already figured out. The Reds are still like, okay, who do we put in as DH every game? There's been, like, I think, a different DH every single game. I'm like, guys, it'd just be nice to like have consistency.
They're just kind of like out in that National League, like, we have a DH now. Like, what do we do with this?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I will say the other thing that frustrates me about the Reds, and it's more of the coach. So our coach has done this for the last 2 years. He does this thing where he lets his starters only go like 5 innings, and then he goes to his bullpen. I hate it. It's this thing we've been doing for 3 years now, and it's awful. I don't like it. He does 5 innings, and then he goes, okay, bullpen. And I'm like, why? He was pitching fine. Like, Mahle went, let's see, his last game, he went 5 innings. He struck out 7, only walked 2, and only gave up 3 hits, and they pulled him. And I'm sitting there going, wait, why?
Yeah.
He only had like 85 pitches. At least get him go to the 6th, maybe even part of the 7th.
Something that you see or would make sense if you were sticking with like a 4-man rotation all year, because it's like, okay, we got to be a little bit more intentional with how our workload is distributed among our starters. They're going to have less rest time, so maybe it makes more sense to have them less innings. And it also is something that frustrates me about postseason baseball too.
Oh, so yeah.
Because how many times do you see a starter get pulled after like maybe not even like to the 5th inning, like the 4th inning or the 3rd inning even, because these coaches are like, you know what? Now that we got a 2-0 lead, we're going to take our starter out and put our bullpen in the rest of the game, because our bullpen is such a lock to keep this other team at 0 that we won the game. We won the game in the 3rd inning. We got 2 runs in the 2nd. So now we're just going to put the bullpen in. That automatically means it'll be blanks the rest of the game and we win. And how many times does that bite you in the butt? And you end up in a situation where it's like, man, now our bullpen's overworked.
Or if you just are like, or if you're like the Reds and, the postseason they went to back in 2013, they were facing the Giants, and we got swept, because that's what the Reds do in the playoffs. But the second game, right, it's interesting because the Reds haven't decided. I think this is where Lodolo, so our number 2 prospect, this is where he can make his debut. He's a lefty, which finally the Reds have a lefty that's worth anything. Like, the Reds have never had a good lefty, I think, in my lifetime, outside of Aroldis Chapman. He's about the only one I can remember that sort of started games. And then it's going to go against McKenzie for the Guardians. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. 2 kind of young dudes kind of battling out possibly.
McKenzie's kind of like a starter bullpen hybrid. They used him in relief that first game. He actually, I think, got tagged with the loss because Bobby Witt Jr. hit a double to put him ahead. Yeah, so McKenzie's kind of in that hybrid stage of, is he a starter, is he a reliever? We don't really know yet. He looks like he's going to be all right, though. Still really raw. I think he's got some things to work out still, but I think he'll be a good pitcher in the long run. That's an interesting matchup, though.
And I also want to point out that this is how weird the Reds lineup is. When Drury is your leading home run hitter with 1. Farmer's your leading average guy. Farmer's also your leading runs batted in guy, and then Joey Votto's your leading in on-base percentage. So that's going to be the Reds all year. So that's why I'm very concerned. I'm not concerned with our pitching. To be honest, this might be the first time I've said this, that the Reds, I trust the Reds bullpen. I trust some of the starters.
Yeah.
And that worries me a little bit, just because I know how the Reds in the past have had a great bullpen in April, and then they just tank it the rest of the year. We don't have a closer really right now. We've had 2 guys close the 2 wins. Let me repeat that. We've had 2 guys close the last 2 wins. We do not even have. So Sims, who our normal closer is, he's on IR or whatever you call it, IL, whatever they're calling it now. And so it's interesting to me. I don't know how the Reds will do. We'll see. It's going to be a balance of up and downs. But I think the Reds, to be honest with you, Josh, I'm going to be conservative here. I think there'll be a split this series. I think you're going to see either the Guardians take the first game or the Reds do, and then it's going to be a split. So that's what I think. It's going to be a split. I think the Reds win the second game. They lose the first game. So I think the Reds win the second game, maybe like 4-1 or something like that. But they'll lose the first one probably I'm thinking like 3-2. So that's what I got.
I got to feel good. Bieber, you said that first game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Since you read off the Red stats, I'll read you off the Indians Cleveland stats right now. Stephen Kwan, batting average, 800. Stephen Kwan, on base percentage, 857. Hits, Stephen Kwan, 8. Then you get to home runs, and Jose Ramirez and Oscar Mercado are tied for 1. And Mercado is our leading RBI guy with 5, but 4 of those came on a grand slam. So one of them on one swing, but hey.
Yeah,
we're not as split up and divided as the Reds offense is, as you can
Reds,
see.
Like I said, the Reds are a quilt. They're just pieces put together to make it through this year, because I believe the Reds have some really good prospects, like right on the cusp. So I think the mentality of the general manager is like, okay, let's get through this year, and then maybe we'll have something. But the issue is the Reds have been doing that for like the last freaking 5 years. Like, we just need to stop doing that and put our eggs in the basket. Is pressure that I think if the Reds struggle this year, there's gonna be a lot of fan hustle, I think, and bustle a little bit. But yeah, I'm excited. Josh, this will be fun, on all year thing with the Guardians and the Reds. We'll see by the end of the year what happens. So when October rolls around, we'll see who is a little richer at the end of the time. We'll see. Who knows? We'll see. But that is what's happening with baseball. Obviously, we've seen some other great stories. Ohtani, obviously, just being Ohtani. I mean, he struggled a little bit, but just some cool stories. Some young guys, Witt, some of the other guys you mentioned. It's fun that baseball is back, Josh. It's always a great time of the year. It makes me feel the warmth coming back in. But it's also another big time of the year. And our Cleveland Cavaliers Yes, I said that without LeBron James. And by the way, LeBron James is sitting on his bed watching the playoffs this year. Who said that before? Oh, wait, I don't know. I said that back in November. Just want to point that out.
You have a roster of like all 40-year-old has-beens. Like, I don't know why anybody thought they would do anything else other than what they've accomplished this year.
And I also want to point out this too, that Frank Vogel is supposed to be fired, and that is
fired. He got fired,
yes,
actually.
That is the most disrespectful thing you could do, that man, because that guy did not put this team together. Their GM should be gone. Pelinka should be gone.
Pelinka is one of the worst GMs, dude. If he wasn't Kobe Bryant's agent, he literally would have no reason to be a Laker employee at all.
Yeah, and I
wouldn't even be a GM at all if it wasn't for being Kobe's agent. Like that gave him some kind of status.
Yeah, and I think, this team was 16 games under 500, and you know what's so funny? You know what's so funny, Josh, is that the Cleveland Cavaliers finished, which, by the way, if they don't get injured, I don't know about you, Josh, if you can answer this with me. I think if the Cavs don't get Jarrett Allen injured, if LeVert stays healthy completely, if Garland stays healthy, if Mobley stays healthy completely, this team is a 4 or 5 seed easily.
Yeah, you didn't even mention Sexton either.
Yeah, Sexton. He's been out all year. This team is a 4 or 5 seed.
I think the highest they ever were this year was
2.
a 3 seed.
They were 2 at one point.
Yeah.
So they were, and so I look at the Cavs and I'm going, people are like, "Oh, we want LeBron back." I'm like, "No, I don't." Every time he comes back, we have no salary. We have to force it. Kevin Love scored 30 points in 15 minutes yesterday. 30 points in 15 minutes. The man is a 6th man of the year. If he doesn't win 6th man of the year, I'm going to have issues because that guy is averaging 15 and 8 off the bench at 34 years old. Like the dude is doing something pretty cool.
Here's the other thing about LeBron is if he comes to Cleveland, he sees all of these young assets and how much you want to bet they'll be packaged up and traded away for, I don't know, another Clutch Sports client.
Yeah, it's a reality, and I think everyone's blaming Russell Westbrook. I'm like, it's not Russ's fault. It's LeBron's. This falls on LeBron and Anthony Davis.
I think this reason why they blame Westbrook. Maybe it's a little bit of LeBron's fault too, and it's Russell's indirectly just because he's on the team. But they apparently, I keep hearing people say they had the chance to go get Buddy Hield, DeMar DeRozan, Caruso, and KCP, and he said no. Russell Westbrook's the guy we need.
And I think LeBron's at a point of his career where he's won his championships, he's won his MVPs, and now he's just like, I want to play with my friends. That's what I feel like. That's what I feel like LeBron is doing.
When you hear him say stuff like, I want to play with Steph Curry now, and he finally caved and played with Melo after having multiple times or chances to be able to play with him and just didn't because he knew Melo wasn't like a championship level player. And then D Wade, they played in Miami and then a little bit in Cleveland when he was there near the end of his career. So maybe that's the point. I think that was also motivation for going to LA to begin with. The business side of things,
Hollywood,
making Space Jam, the endorsements, the movies, and all that kind of stuff. The uninterrupted show that he does or whatever. It was much more, I think, business driven. And then winning the bubble finals was just maybe a bonus. I don't know if that was actually planned out.
And then he wants to, play with his son. And I'm like, what if he goes? So you're telling me if he goes to Portland, you want to go up to Portland? You got to be kidding me. What are you going to do? How are you going to make that work, LeBron? And the thing is, LeBron will be. I'm still a fan of LeBron coming from Ohio, but please never become the general manager or own the Cavaliers. Please never. I don't want to see that. I don't want to witness that because that would be the work, because that's what he wants to do. He wants to be Michael Jordan. He wants to own a team.
I don't think Dan Gilbert would ever sell him the team, though.
Oh, I don't think so either. Dan Gilbert and LeBron don't really like each other, I don't think.
They don't, yeah.
They don't. But
Dan kind of went along with the LeBron charade because he kind of had to in Cleveland, and it eventually won him a championship. It made Cleveland like a contender at the time, so he just kind of went along with it, but he really didn't like it.
But I'll be honest, he found the right guy in Colby Altman, and he's found the right guy in Bickerstaff. And this is the team that I think all Cavs fans for years have wanted. A team without LeBron, a team that can just play well, that can compete in the Eastern Conference. They are literally going to play the Nets. Do I think they'll beat the Nets in this one-on-one game? There's a chance. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but they still have another chance to then obviously get the 8 seed. I believe that the Cavaliers, if Jarrett Allen's healthy, and if Sexton can maybe come back if they make the playoffs and maybe come back at the end, this is a team that I don't think many teams want to mess with. They beat the Bucks, they beat the Bulls, they beat the Nets, they beat the Lakers, they beat any team you could think of, they beat. And the Cavs are a good enough team to win at least 2 games in a series. I think next year is their year. Not this year, but next year's their year. What is your thoughts?
Gotta be fully healthy. Yeah. Yeah. Brooklyn, I mean, yeah, I don't think you can count them out because Brooklyn's been having their own struggles as well. With the injuries they've had to deal with. Kyrie Irving's finally playing. The NBA got rid of those,
stupid rules
to begin with. That should have never been there. But Kyrie's playing. I'll tell you what, though, who's not playing is Ben Simmons.
That is true.
That's I don't know if
it's funny. It's funny. That's what it is.
It is because did Brooklyn get better from that trade? Like
no.
Just simply getting Harden out of the building?
No.
Like, did that make them better? I don't think it did. Like, Kyrie's playing, I know. So that's going to alter things, I guess, maybe a little bit more too, to make Brooklyn look better. Like maybe they got better after the trade. I don't know.
But we saw Mobley own Kevin Durant in the post. Like Evan Mobley is the face of this franchise for the future.
Yeah.
Like this right guy is young and amazing.
Right now, outside of Kyrie and KD, Brooklyn doesn't have a whole lot going for him. And I think Cleveland, even with all those injuries, might be able to be a little bit deeper.
And they got my man.
Obviously, we don't have the top end talent,
True.
But can maybe those bottom, 4 or 5 outplay Brooklyn, and that be enough to make things interesting? I guess we'll see.
Yeah, and they got Kevin Love coming off the bench. And that's all I got to say.
Yeah,
they have Kevin Love coming off the bench.
This isn't. If you told me at the beginning of the year that Cleveland was playing Brooklyn in the playoffs, I would have guessed okay, we squeaked in as an 8 seed and we're playing the 1 seed Brooklyn. We're going to get swept 4-0. But clearly, the season did not go as everybody anticipated.
Well, I would even say, Josh, that I'm really proud of this Cleveland Cavaliers team. I think as both of us, we were surprised. I mean, I'm surprised they even made the playoffs. They weren't supposed to be anywhere near the playoffs. And I think what it shows is Kobe Altman said, look, screw LeBron. LeBron's done. We don't care about him anymore. This is my team. This is my organization. I'm going to run it the way I want to run it. And Bickerstaff said, hey, sweet, I'm all in. And they got Okoro, who's not talked about enough. The dude's an amazing defensive player. He can't shoot the ball to save his life, but he's an amazing defensive player. They have the first Chetty, right? Chetty, they have Chetty Osman, right? Who is known as like the Turkish Jedi, I guess. I don't know. But they have Markkanen. I haven't even talked about Lauri Markkanen, who's kind of revived his career in Cleveland. And I think maybe the Cleveland Browns can learn a little bit from the Cavs and decide hey, let's not just all in at once. Let's just build our team in the right way. And maybe the Browns can do that too. I don't know. But Josh, it's going to be a crazy NBA playoffs. Obviously, we'll be talking about it as the playoffs go on. We'll be talking about baseball as the baseball season goes on. And the NFL draft is coming up before we know it. And I know Josh and I will be hitting on that. Our next mock draft will be coming out, which just so you all know, it's just, who knows? I feel like every time we make one, there's a big trade or something.
Enough trades and signings have happened that just kind of made some of the picks irrelevant. And now I'm hearing Trayvon Walker's stock is soaring up, and now he might be the edge number 1. So that could affect where Hutchinson gets picked, and even further affect where Thibodeau gets picked.
Yeah, so we will be coming out either next week or the week after. We'll be coming out with our mock draft before the draft. We'll talk about it. Hopefully, maybe we'll have a guest on from the Fifth and Goal podcast. We've talked with them, so hopefully that might happen where they could come on and we could talk some NFL draft. But again, so much happening. We always love watching sports. I hope you guys had an amazing time. I know I did. I know Josh did, because Josh is just chilling in there in his tank top, showing his guns. He's ready for a competition. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you've loved this episode of the podcast and you're watching it on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We have all these new episodes coming out. Obviously, I have videos coming out as well on there. Head over to Josh's channel. Check out all of his craziness that's going on with these competitions coming up here. And then finally, if you like it on, it should be on iTunes here, I think, in the next week or so. There's been a lot of issues because it's Apple, and we all just love Apple. But that's besides the point. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And until next time, we'll see ya.